All right, we got check marks. I got to do the Instagram thing when I start. There it is. There. All right. Look, I don't even think I messed it up at all this time. Let's let's play the intro. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in live. Today, I've got guest Jonathan Bennet. Jonathan, you are a business and executive coach, but you are coming into this world of coaching with a great story and a background of your own. I'd like to get right into it because I know that many people watching haven't heard your story before. Can you give us some background on your career and how you got into business? And we're gonna talk a little bit about how you managed to grow yourself out of the day to day of a consulting business.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, David. It's great to be here, and cheers to everybody for tuning in. So in about 2011, I found myself on the senior team of a large hospital here in Ontario, Canada, where I live. I had an unruly portfolio with lots and bits and pieces to it, and I was working 12, 14-hour days. Young family at the time, really not great in terms of work-life balance, but I learned a ton. It was an amazing job, and I'm grateful for it. I often like to joke it was like 3 free MBAs. We built a new hospital. I made it through, I think, 3 CEOs, and I was just like a sponge for it all. And I'm very grateful, but I was really burned out. And I thought
Oh,
I
hey,
needed, yeah,
hang on. Everyone says that in Canada, healthcare is free. So why do they even need leadership or administrative managers?
It's an excellent question. I mean, these are very complex organizations. I mean, it had 2,700 employees, 4 different unions, positions that are not salaried employees, a very engaged local community that is asked to give money and be fundraised from and with. So these are really complex organizations.
Okay, so it's just as complicated as any other business of this size.
Yeah, they really are. They
Okay,
really
okay,
are.
good. So you were in the administrative role, and how
Yeah.
did you get from there into the consulting that you ultimately ended up doing?
Yeah, so I kind of I hit the wall, and I just knew that this wasn't serving me, my kind of purpose. I earlier in my career, I had worked in and around the nonprofit sector, and while I was kind of moving up the ranks, as it were, I'd hired lots of consultants, and in the back of my mind, I'd always felt there was a gap between the kind of consultants that serve for-profit entities and the kind of consultants I could find that were doing strategy work in the nonprofit space. And so I'd had this sort of inkling that that might be something that I felt like I was suited to and might enjoy doing. And so when it finally came time for me to, jump and quit, I did. And that was what I decided to do, is launch a management consulting company. It was a strategy shop. It still is. And we just sort of grew from there. I mean, it was with the kind of like arrogance and foolishness that you jump into these things. Like, how hard could this be? I sort of said to myself,
So
turns out pretty hard.
So, tell us a little bit about the kind of consulting work you did for these not for profit entities. So, was there a certain like menu of projects that were kind of doing the same thing for everybody, or were they very custom? Like, how did it evolve?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So I'm a generalist. I have a really broad skill set, background in comms, marketing, branding, strategy, GR, PR, you name it. I've done lots and lots of different things. So when I first started, I was just hungry for any kind of work. And I was not even sure whether I was going to grow a business or whether it was just me being a solo kind of preneur. I really didn't know, but I left my options open. And I was saying yes to lots of different things. And I started to win work, primarily strategy work, so strategic planning. And I evolved the sort of the core service of the business in the first few years was a sort of a deep stakeholder engagement strategic planning process that took 4 to 6 months. And it left a real legacy of deep engagement with that nonprofit's whole world, with their whole environment around them. And we started to become known for doing a really rich process, and it was really serving the sector well. I started to win too much work, started to subcontract out pieces of this service that I was sort of organically kind of developing and growing and customizing. And then it became silly not to hire people because they became really knowledgeable at doing what I was doing, and it was more affordable. And I think at that point, sort of in year 1 or 2, decided, yes, you know what, I'm actually growing a business and I want to be the kind of employer that I always wished I could have found. It was one of those sorts of things. And so that was kind of the core work was doing strategic plans. We did a ton of operational work though. We did all redesigns, we did comms work, we did quite a lot of branding. But that was really as we were sort of, early on in consulting work, you tend to say yes to a lot of stuff and you try to kind of narrow it down, find out where your margins are, find out what you're good at, find out what the market really wants from you. About halfway along the journey, I was starting to tell a joke fairly frequently, which sounded something like, middle management is where our strat plans go to die. And that joke became actually the source of what then became kind of the next core product offering. The nonprofit sector at the time just really didn't have affordable, focused, tailored middle management training. Just course, how to delegate, how to manage your time, how to have hard conversations, how to performance manage, how to communicate. And so we put together a kind of 6-module certificate, and we just sold it, and it went like gangbusters. And so we kind of became a strategy shop on one hand, and on the other hand, a kind of training firm. And it was cross-pollinating quite well. And that was the sort of the arc of the 10-year kind of service journey that we went on.
Okay. And so what you described there is something that I've heard from many people who try to grow a consulting business, because most consulting businesses start off with one person who's an expert in a particular domain, and they know, maybe how to create a result for someone. They know what information they need. And it sounds like you went through that evolution of trying to more formally create a process, a roadmap of how you work with a client. And then the first thing you did is you tried to take pieces of that journey and outsource them, but you were still driving the bus on every one of them. And then eventually you got to the point where you could actually have somebody else take a client through that whole journey. Can you, when I meet people that are on that path, they usually bump into this issue where they can never really trust the other person enough to hand over the reins. Can you speak a little bit to that, about how you were able to get to the point where you could let an employee drive the relationship with the client from start to finish?
Yeah, for sure. It is the barrier to most small consulting firms never getting past 3 or 4 people, because so much information lives in the head of the primary person that both sells the work and then does and delivers the work. How we were able to push through it, and we got to about 13 full-time staff when I left, was by systematizing the process. Really mapping it all out. We had rules, kind of like SOPs, I suppose you would say. So we were able to take folks that were much more junior in their career and teach them the steps, scripting, how things should sound. Honestly, they would go in and they would feel kind of embarrassed by it, but we would all tell the same jokes. There were jokes that were so well worn and they always landed. And because we did the same thing many times, we could teach somebody that was, I don't know, like, in the first 10 years of their career, how to more or less sound like they were in the last 10 years of their career. And that became the kind of secret sauce to scaling the strategy work that we did. We also became good at knowing clients that just kind of weren't for us. So we were pretty good at a sort of a mid range. So they had to be at least a couple $1,000,000 up to maybe 50 to 100 million. We couldn't really do anything bigger than that. We didn't have the deep analytics that a big serious firm, I mean, we were serious, but like that one of the big four would have, right? They'd be able to come in with a SWAT team of MBAs and do data in a way that we just never were. And that really wasn't our space, nor were we competing in that way. People would hire us because we were deeply empathetic and really great listeners. We would spend time with their staff and with their clients. We would sit cross-legged with, these are nonprofits, right? So their clients might be seniors or kids with special needs, or healthcare, social service agencies, arts and culture organization. So we would sit with their donors, with their staff members, and do focus groups and really leave behind a legacy of deep engagement. And that's what we became known for. And it was teaching folks how to do that, like teaching the staff how to really be good at that.
Right. Okay. And so talk about then the time from the time you hired your first person until you realized that you didn't need to be a part of that conversation anymore. Like how did that evolution unfold? Because what I'm guessing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you hired the first person, the experience of working with that first person probably helped you to more formally flush out these rules and steps and the methodology. As you were trying to teach them how to do it, you probably realized that, like, well, here's the stuff that isn't written that we need to kind of get down.
Yeah, and we made lots of really spectacular mistakes along the way. Great people, just not right for where we needed them to be in our journey. I think, for folks out there that are kind of at the should I hire somebody stage, or I've got 2 or 3 people, the biggest lesson I learned was really to hire mini-mes, which is to hire people like yourself that you can teach to deliver the work, to build the relationship in the same way that you can, and to sell work. If people can't sell work, then the initial bond, there's a kind of promise that happens when you sell consulting work. The person sits across from you and you say, here's what we think your problem is, and here are the steps that we think that we're going to use to solve and fix your problem. And there's a kind of an inherent problem there, an inherent promise, I should say, that transpires. If the senior person in the room, who's all slick and sounding great, is the one that delivers that message, and then the client never sees that message, it feels like the classic bait and switch.
So they never see them again.
They never see them again, right? So, if it was me going in there and sounding all smarty pants and saying, really, really smart things, and here's how we're going to do it, and then the client never hears or sees from me again, there's a kind of like, they just experience it like, what was that? And now I've got this junior person, and do they know, like, we want that guy again. So it's very, very hard to scale yourself if that's what you're trying to do. You have to trust yourself that you've invested enough time and training, and you've hired the right junior person, and you've scripted them in the right way, that they can go in there and make that exact same promise in the way that you would make it. You'll be in the background if they need help. If some weird thing happens, you can guide them. But you don't want to be in the room when that promise gets made, because it's the client looking them in the eye and saying, I believe that you can help us and solve our problem. Yes, I will hire you. And if that comes to you as the owner, not your staff member, you can't scale.
Can you give us an idea, thinking about the common client? You said you had a pretty good sketch of who these clients would be, these not-for-profit organizations. Can you give us an idea of how big a commitment would these people be making when they decided to engage with you, like as a percentage of their budget or resources or something, just so we can get an idea of how big these decisions were?
Yeah, I mean, like the price of a strat plan would range anywhere from 20 to, north of 50,000. It really depended on the size and scope and scale of the organization. It would more be a problem of time, because it was a huge investment of the board of directors, of the senior team. We would be meeting with, we'd be doing multiple focus groups along the way, and it was a public expression of their desire to be listening to all of their stakeholders. Right. And so there was some sort of like tension around it all, and the trust had to be high with us, that we were going to steward and host this in a way that was going to leave them with the relationships whole and in a better place than they began, and that they would look good in front of all of their community. And so it was really that. I mean, yeah, the spend was quite big. For some of them, they didn't, they would only do a strat plan like this every 3 to 5 years. And it was a significant amount, and we would be bidding against other firms inevitably. But when they chose us, it's because they wanted the project to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They wanted to look good. They wanted to be able to listen deeply to the people that cared about them, and they wanted to be able to make change. And they were the kinds of things that we would be looking for when, certainly as we got further along in our maturity journey as a company, we were able to choose our clients as much as our clients were choosing us, and that became really important.
And then you said that you also grew into creating this middle management training.
Yeah.
Was it because you were creating these strategic plans and the organizations were having trouble then rolling them out? Was that the problem that you were trying to address there?
Yeah, I mean, it came multifold. Like we started to get to know inside these organizations, they would have us back. Some of the executive directors, it's pretty lonely to be a leader. And suddenly they would have a management consulting team kind of wrapped around them for 6 months, and they kind of liked it. And so we would find out about all their other problems, staffing issues, workflow issues, workplace culture issues. Sometimes we'd hear it from them. Sometimes we'd hear it because we did focus groups and surveys with the staff and or their clients or their communities. So it felt in a way we were only half giving them what they needed. Like, here's the thing that you kind of need. But good luck with that. See ya. Call us in 3 years. And we just sort of felt like, couldn't we do more? Like, couldn't we go deeper? And so that's what we did. We created some training that was going to help these teams, management teams and middle management teams, be able to, just improve their skills and be able to ultimately implement the kinds of strategies that we were building together.
Okay. We got a bunch of people here that are joining us live. Victor says that he just gave the show a like. Please, whatever platform you're listening on, I would appreciate and love if you could give it a like as well. Mark says good morning from Arizona. He's joining us from probably a toasty warm place right now in August. And he says, good point about the bait and switch of people. He says he's been there, experiencing that on the customer side. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation here today is that you, Jonathan, successfully implemented this structurization in your business, a systematization, to the point that you actually sold a consulting business. And, I talk to a lot of people all the time about buying and selling businesses. And I got to tell you that the kind of business you had, I would predict the vast majority of them simply fold up shop when the owner decides it's time to retire. So let's talk about sort of the, after you had onboarded some people. You said at one point you got up to 13 people. Let's talk about what it started to look like when you wanted to sell, and how the deal unfolded, and who you sold it to.
Yeah, so the further we grew and the more stable the revenue became, and the more predictable our clients, they started to come back, then I was able to move up and out of the business. I spent more and more time working on it, not in it. I was able to kind of promote some folks from within. And, it kind of came to a sort of fateful day. It was right before the pandemic, and I was in Dublin, Ireland with my wife, and we were on vacation, and we were walking around the streets, and she said to me, we were sort of talking about our futures and what we're going to do next. And I sort of said, I'm starting to think like, I wonder if this is like the next, like, am I going to retire from here? Like, do I have another 10 years here, or, or what? And I was sort of like, I think I'm going to do the next thing. And she said, well, you better come up with a plan, because you can't just give 2 weeks notice. And
very wise. Yeah.
yeah, pretty good advice. And it was sort of at that time that I realized my exit strategy, my succession planning, was quite private, and it was inside me. And I had somebody inside the company who had grown as a leader, who I had trained, and who was just as good, but frankly, if I'm honest, better at doing the work and selling the work than me. And she was increasingly responsible for a lot of the revenue and a lot of the growth. And so I came back and said to her, I think we should talk about, what's next for you. Because my fear is that, I was a sitting duck. Like, she was fabulous in front of a lot of clients. And, there was just nothing to have anybody poach her. Like, I couldn't have done a thing. And, they could probably pay better than me. So I felt there was a sense of urgency. So a little bit before I was ready, and a bit before she was ready to be thinking about it, we went into conversations about what could a transition look like, a kind of management buyout. It took longer than we might have thought because of the pandemic.
Well, before we get into that, there's
Uh-huh.
a few things I want to touch on there as far as the sort of negotiation, if you will. But when just before you went to Ireland, you said you spent your time working on the business instead of in it. This is an expression people use all the time.
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick snapshot of what your day-to-day was like when you were working on the consulting business?
Brand building, hosting community-based top of funnel seminars. I'm a reasonably good facilitator, and I can convene people together well. So I would do that. I would spend a lot of time networking with past clients. I'm a big believer in sell more to the people that have already bought from you.
Sure.
I think you can work a lot from a tightly held list is gold. And so we really built that. It's just the old farming metaphor. And so that was a lot of what I was doing. I still led some of the biggest projects for sure. I never got to a point where I didn't lead any work until towards the very end. But I was doing things that I think were kind of enhancing the overall positioning, and doing things like negotiating with government, and like networking with other consulting firms, looking for strategic partnerships, building up B-Corp relationships, that kind of thing.
If I called it business development and marketing, would that pretty much encapsulate it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got team members who can now, go in, make the sale, do the project, deliver the project. You've got the productive capacity of your business now handled by other people,
Yeah.
and you're just focused on the front end, bringing more people in the front door.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
it.
That's awesome, because I like people use that expression all the time, working on the business, and what they often mean is creating those systems. Now you did that, and I'm sure those were iteratively constantly changing
Oh
over
yeah,
time
for sure they
as
were.
things
Yeah.
evolved.
Yeah.
But it's not like you created this system, got some people to do the work, and then you could, run the business 2 hours a day from the beach. You were then still working full time, just in this other capacity, making sure that those team members were busy all the time.
I was for sure.
Yeah.
And then in the last 2 years while I was there, before we actually created the sale and the transfer of ownership, I stepped down as CEO, and Danielle stepped up as CEO. And so she took on much of that business development and team, leading and hiring new people and that kind of CEO work. And at the very end, I actually just, like, in order to be useful, I went back and just led a bunch of projects, which had been a while since I actually felt a bit rusty.
You kind of swapped roles.
We totally swapped roles. Yeah.
Okay. And so, all right, let's get back to the moment where you decided to start speaking with Danielle about her takeover of the business.
Yeah.
Um, Having a discussion about the sale of a business between a business owner and someone who works in the business, it can be, complicated, because you're working together with her every day in one capacity, and at the same time, you're negotiating over the transaction. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you to kind of exist through that? Like, did you? Because one of the fears I often hear from business owners is they say, well, if I've upset this person and they quit, I'm screwed, right?
It's a
Because
risk.
because this is a key person in my organization, right? And
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about how you get through there.
Um, so we were lucky that we think fairly alike. Our values are super aligned. I, one of the earliest concerns was as we did some succession planning, I went and spoke to all the staff one on one and just said, what do you think of yourself? I'm thinking about my future. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen drastically, but I'm starting to think about the future. How about you? Where do you think? And I was just canvassing really was like, was there any kind of internal competition that I didn't really know about? And it turned out not really. I did know there would be some turnover. There were some people that were very loyal to me. And it wasn't that they didn't like Danielle. In fact, they liked her a lot. But I think that they thought of themselves as her colleague, not as somebody that was,
Right.
they
Okay.
were at a point where maybe there were some other things that they could be doing in their career as well. So in one case, with a very senior person who had been there a long time, I worked with her and we were able to find something else for her to transition to. And she's gone on to an amazing thing. So I feel really quite proud of that elegant transition. And then one or two other people just spun out and it was ready for them to do something else. It wasn't really acrimonious. But when Danielle transitioned into being the CEO, the humbling thing is how quickly everybody orientated around the new boss. It's like, I thought it was me. I thought, oh yeah, look, wow, leadership, all the stuff. Turns out actually people just know where their bread is buttered. And so I could barely get people on it. I still technically owned the place and I couldn't get anybody on a call because they were all busy with her, and I thought it was just lots of humility there. Just, put that out there.
So did you work out the deal with her before she became CEO or after?
Um, gradually is how we did it. We said, let's assume that I'm going to sell the company to you, and let's assume we'll get an external evaluator on it.
Okay.
Let's assume my price will be higher than your price, and let's just assume those things. But in good faith, we'll go through that. But in order to make sure that you're right and ready for this, why don't you go be CEO for a year? And
So
I'll
she got,
just
as a buyer, she got a test drive.
you need to find out whether this is right for you and you feel, and she,
Mhm.
there was a part of her that was is this going to match where I'm at? And does this feel good? And I don't think she ever thought can I do it? She's not like that, but I think it was a comfort staged approach for her.
Right.
And it was good for me too, because it helped me to start to let go of things, which the emotional journey of selling a company is something that I've been talking about nonstop for the last couple of years. And it's big. And so it starts long before you actually sell it, and it lasts long after it's not yours. And so for me, that transition was really helpful just on a purely business basis. It was great for us both. Because it was clear that she was running the company and I was just the exact same as some other employee at that point. And so when, I left, there was none of our clients were like, what's going to happen now? Because she'd been running the thing for 18 months at that point.
Right. And it sounds like you took one of the most possibly contentious issues, what's the price going to be? And you kind of made that into used a third party negotiating tactic. You said, we're going to get somebody else to come and evaluate this.
Yeah, I did.
What
And I also wanted her to be in charge of the results that, at least a good chunk of them that were being put in front of the evaluator. So she wanted to do something, it just needed to be fair, and she needed some skin in the game, and so did I. And so with a year of results behind her, we were able to kind of move into that. And we just hired a third party evaluator and went at it that way.
so okay, so I
And
just
we
want
both got
to
lawyers, obviously, and yeah.
yeah, I want to sort of spell this out for the people that are watching.
Okay.
So one of the challenges when you buy a business is that you're basing a lot of the purchase price on the results of the owner that is selling. But if you're worried that part of the results are derived from the owner as an individual, if the goodwill resides in the individual versus the business, is the way we often express it here.
Yeah.
What you wanted to do is you wanted to say, Danielle, yes, it's true. You can be the leader of this business. You can operate this business. The goodwill's in the business, not in me.
Mhm.
So we'll put you in charge. You can actually manage the results of this business. And then we're going to base the price in part on this year that you've actually been the captain of the ship. And so now sort of it's almost like you have sidestepped a lot of the normal problems that can arise in a business that potentially could be very personality driven.
Yeah, totally. And it was easier also to convince lenders to come to the table because she'd already been doing it.
Yeah, well, lenders love insider deals. They
Right.
love to see people that are already in a business become the owners because then there's not that worry about, do you know what you're doing? Like because yeah,
Right.
she's already been in the seat, right?
Yeah.
And so can you share a little bit about the deal? So you mentioned lenders. So was your structure that you got paid a certain amount of closing, or did you carry some of it? Like how did you structure that?
Yeah. So the deal was just like I got paid on closing, and there was
Okay.
a bit of a holdback, but not huge. And and that's still working its way through several years later.
Okay. And so, a lot of the times, if someone was going to buy a business like yours and they didn't have that opportunity to get in there and run it first, they would want it to be very heavily geared on a seller finance with all kinds of warranties attached so that the business didn't perform the way you were
Yeah,
claiming it would, that there'd be this ability to offset. And you avoided a lot of that by the fact that Danielle was actually able to sit in the chair and
that's
run
right.
it. So she
Yeah,
had the confidence to know exactly what she was getting.
totally. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
already had relationships with clients. Already had the staff were already working for her. Like it was. Yeah.
Okay. So now in our pre-call, which was a
Mm,
couple weeks ago,
yeah.
we also brought up the topic of this of B-Corp status.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about this? Because I've never had a guest on before talk about it, but can you tell us what B-Corp status is and why it was something you pursued and why maybe in your particular case it was a valuable sort of thing to do?
Yeah, so there's about 7,000 B Corps around the world. So for-profit companies of all sizes, from small, really small companies, all the way up to like broadly held, multinationals, can become a B Corp. And really, it's a kind of accreditation around corporate social responsibility. And they, like any kind of accreditation, they put you through the ringer around every aspect of your business. They score it and rank it and validate it. You have to have policies on all the things, folks that you deal with, including
This is
your.
kind of like a welding shop becoming ISO certified, sort of.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like exactly that kind of thing. And there's lots of examples of in the public sector, people getting accredited for things, and it's really kind of like a benchmarking tool. And you get scored against what a high performing organization would have, and you have to kind of meet a threshold. And
And
it
so
was yeah. Sorry, go
this
ahead.
is for like social responsibility stuff. So can you give us an idea of the types of commitments you had to make in your business to achieve it?
Yeah. So around workplace wellness and safety, both physical safety, but also emotional safety. You've got to pay a living wage. You have to have some connection to philanthropy and giving some money back. There's big environmental connections to this and climate change. So if you're the sort of business that is values driven around corporate social responsibility and environmental social governance, if they're things that are important to you, you can look at becoming a B Corp because it's a kind of external certification that connects you to a movement worldwide of other companies that care about these exact same things. And so for us, why we did it was because we were dealing with not-for-profits who were just naturally, appropriately worried about whether they're going to get ripped off by some bunch of sharky, smart, consultants, and we were able to say we're a B Corp, and you can view online. We have a transparent set of criteria here. You can look at us online. And so it became a way to kind of quell the waters and for us to come in and to say, well, we are a for-profit company. We believe in business as a force for good, and our values are fairly aligned with yours. What we actually got out of it was kind of interesting. We got all of that, and it did help. What it did, though, is it connected us with hundreds and thousands of other B Corps around the world. And when you're a small business and you want to just, find an external supplier, or you want to, you're moving into a new market, or you just want a different conversation with somebody, like I could call up any B Corp owner anywhere and just say, hey, we're a B Corp. I need the thing, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was instantly your friend. So you kind of got this built-in network of like-minded, similarly aligned owners, and there were conferences and all that sort of stuff too. But for me, it was doing joint venture marketing, being panels on other people's panels, and in other people's newsletters that were B Corps, and we just did a lot of, and we bid on work together with other B Corps, and that's how we found one another, is just by both being a B Corp, and we could just kind of start on third base. It was just kind of great.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So it helped you find a tribe, so to
It
speak.
really did. Yeah, it really did.
Did you actually do some of the not-for-profits that you would typically do work for? Are they typically getting this B Corp certification or no?
So no, because you have to be a for-profit company to become a
Gotcha.
B Corp.
Okay.
Most nonprofits are accredited in their own. So accreditation is actually extremely familiar in healthcare and social services. Most agencies of any size have some form of accreditation. The for-profit side, ISO is one to think about, but there are some, but it's less common. And so it was just, we were able to help our clients understand, it's a bit like you being certified with Accreditation Canada in healthcare.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, okay. And so that was a nice proxy for them.
Okay. And so, what did it require for you to maintain that? It sounds like an arduous process to get it in the beginning, but then is there a requalification thing that
Yeah.
you're always, and
Every
what kind
3
of,
years.
okay, so tell me about the burden or the cost, I guess, as far as time, attention, money, et cetera.
Yeah, it's not insignificant. You do, it's people hours more than anything else. You are constantly just trying to self-improve and get better. You get over the threshold, and then you want your next grade to be better than your last one. And so you kind of have a work plan, and you're sort of always in a way you're thinking about will this help me on my next B Corp score? That kind of gets embedded in your head as you're upgrading stuff, and you're oh, we could do this cool partnership. Oh, I wonder if what will their supply chain be like? Is that going to be a problem for our B Corp score? Should we do that? So it actually does change your behavior and how you show up as a corporation. I would just stress this isn't for everybody. And you become,
so who is it for? That was gonna be my next question, is who
I
should
think,
be considering this?
I think if your clients and or your staff are people that have, we'll just say, progressive values and are gonna be moved by that, i.e. they'll come and work for you or they'll buy from you because your ethics and values are attached to your product or attached to your workplace culture in such an explicit way that it becomes a part of your brand, then becoming a B Corp is a way to stamp a certification on that and attach yourself to a community that's got a lot of rigor and that you can both prove and improve over time. If these things to you sound that sounds like a lot of waste of money and that doesn't connect with me, then it wouldn't be right for you. Because it really is, it's not some little side thing that takes HR, 3 hours to do. It's not. It's very embedded in your whole DNA of your organization and how you do basically run your business in every way.
Yeah, it ends up coming through in the values that everyone has to buy into.
That's right. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah. Toussaint says, great content. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Good to have you here today. So let me ask you then this question, because you've gone through this process, you sold the business to Danielle. Looking back on it, if you were going to meet somebody else who had a business of any kind or a business like yours, from your experience, where do you think some of the missteps were maybe that you had, or what would you have done a little bit differently, I think, if you had to do this again?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the first thing, this is just the coach coming out in me, not to be too hard on yourself as you make some mistakes, because they tend to be our best teachers. But if I'm, to sort of go back and, Monday morning quarterback my journey, I hired a number of people along the way because we had work that was sort of adjacent to what we were doing. And I thought that, oh yeah, like it'll be cheaper to insource that than outsource it. Or it would be nice to have that person like work on this piece of stuff. So like in the nonprofit world, like fundraising is adjacent to strategy, branding is adjacent to strategy. And so we started to kind of like get into these spaces. And so we hired designers and fundraisers and government relations people, and none of it was really core business. And it became my job then to fill up their bucket, because they're like, cool, like, what do you want me to do? But they didn't know how to sell. And that, even though I like tried to hire people that could sell the work, like honestly, they just never could. So what I would kind of recommend for people is don't start hiring back office stuff or adjacent service stuff until you've really built up and scaled out and replicated the thing that you know how to do. So once you do that, if people know how to sell and deliver the work that you do, you can continue to train, and then they can train a train, and you can like scale it up and actually get some like margin. You can take a holiday. The place doesn't fall apart. And or you can work less jobs. You'll probably never work none, but you can work far fewer and start to think about other things. I think you need to get to quite a much larger number of employees. Like if I think about my practice now and companies that are kind of at are in the kind of valley of death, somewhere between 20 and 70 employees. For those folks, it's not really until they're at 30 or 40 employees that they're like really insourcing HR and other like aligned services and trying to build out what they're doing, because it genuinely is, and it makes financial sense to kind of like pull those folks in. I did it way too early. I didn't understand that I shouldn't be spending money on those things early on.
So you think maybe using subcontractors more for these things would have been a better thing, or just other companies that did it as a service?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would have outsourced all of that stuff and just created partnerships and done agreements, which is what we did way more of in the last half of my time at Larraday. Yeah.
Awesome. If Danielle had not wanted to buy the business, what likely would have been your next plan?
I probably would have participated in a roll-up. We were just about big enough that there were firms that came and talked to us every so often. I wasn't like getting the door knocked down, but there were 2 or 3 that had come along and said, hey, like we could buy up 5 or 6 firms like yours and create, a networked opportunity. So there's one out of the US.
Were they trying to take your product and match it with other products to kind of create a catalog in some big new consulting business that would have the several product lines?
Yeah, so it would have been in both cases, the 2 main cases that were, we kind of kicked the tires and thought about it. It wasn't the right time, and we weren't quite big enough at the exact moment that they came around. But really, the kind of roll up they were doing is like, let's get a bunch of management consulting shops and branding shops and fundraising shops that all serve the nonprofit, and like, let's roll them up, give the current owners a small piece of it. They'll continue to run their business and keep it whole, but we'll be able to just basically partner in an extremely formal way, and it all, is owned centrally, and you'd end up just like giving your shares to your company to a larger roll up.
You'd still end up working there too. You wouldn't get that escape that you were looking for from the exit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not impossible for somebody to come and buy a company like the one I grew, but I think that the best case scenario is to do a management buyout or a complete employee buyout. There's new legislation in Canada that's enabling employees to own companies. And that would also have been a possibility. I imagine if I was still there now, a few years later, and this legislation had come through, I'd be thinking about an employee buyout as well as an option.
Yeah, and And what Jonathan is referring to is the new employee ownership trust rules, and there's similar legislation in the UK and the
in the
US.
UK. Yeah.
And I'm working towards having a guest come on to talk just about that because it is kind of a new and different thing, and I can see how it would really have suited your business quite well.
Yeah,
Um,
B Corps
you
love employee owned. You really get good points on the B Corp
okay,
scoring for that. Yeah, there's a couple people on LinkedIn, like John Snell talks about it a lot. The new employee trust stuff in Canada, and I just think it's very exciting. It's really giving owners like I was another really valuable option, but also we've got a whole new generation of workers that are coming through that could connect in a really meaningful and deep way to a company over a much longer period of time than they would, because they will be, a part owner in it. And it changes your orientation to making money when it genuinely directly benefits you as an owner. So, yeah.
and so now tell everyone because you weren't old enough to just retire. So tell everyone what do you do now? Like, what was the post consulting world life like for Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, David. So I was pretty sure that I was going to get into some advisory work, coaching work. I've been a governance nerd for a long time. I've sat on boards, I've served boards, I've done consulting work with and for boards, and so and I'm a chartered director. And so I thought, a couple of things. I would probably take on some kind of executive coaching / trusted advisory work. I really use a blend of those two things. I use coaching as a tool. I do give advice. So that's why I call myself an advisor kind of first. And then I also sit on 3 corporate boards. So I've got kind of like, I guess, like a number of revenue streams and a number of things to keep me interested and engaged. But I have a lot of control. So I started a new company, but I purposefully am not scaling this. I have, an EA. And so for me, it's about a lifestyle now, and it's about doing things that are really meaningful for me and getting involved in projects and people that, I think I can really make a difference with.
Awesome. And so what I'm going to do is when we're finished here is I'm going to update the show notes to include your LinkedIn profile
Cool.
URL as well as the link to clearlythen.com. And we'll include that in the audio there as well if anyone wants to reach out and get a hold of you. I want to give you a big thank you for sharing the story of your journey, because I think it really um, is great to hear from someone who pulled something off that is definitely not easy, but if
Thanks.
somebody realized, "Hey, this is the path I'm going to take,"
Hmm.
I mean, it it it's years of informed decision making that led you to this position, going all the way back to being insightful about who you hired to make sure that you had a Danielle on your staff, right?
Hmm.
Because really, uh, you weren't just bringing on consultants to help your business grow, you were choosing the person, you were hiring the person that was gonna be, ultimately your successor.
Yeah, and I thanks for saying all that. It's lovely. You do these things in isolation, and unless you're on a podcast talking about it, nobody ever says, "Hey, nice job." Like you don't actually get a attaboy from really kind of anyone. So it's lovely to hear that. I guess those things are true. Like I'd love to say I did it very purposefully. I think some happy accidents happened, and I was grateful to have attracted some people around me to kind of come on the journey of building that company. There was one person there that had the right sort of mix of skills and abilities and interest to be able to take it on. So I feel really grateful, and I at this point in my career I'm just really lucky because I get to help other people that are on their journeys, and it could be like mine or not, but it's kind of an intimate work that I get to do, and I feel really fortunate to be able to spend my time with other entrepreneurs and other founders. And if anybody wants to have a chat, just please reach out. I'm happy to talk anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone that tuned in to watch here today. I think it's been a great conversation. I will remind everyone, as I always do, that just in a few weeks from now, Labor Day, my new book, "Buying versus Starting a Small Business: Search or Startup: A Guide to Keep You from Going Broke," is coming out. Pre-order is available for Kindle and now Audible as well. So, and the paperback as well will be released on Labor Day. So if you've been thinking that you just really, really, really should be a business owner in one way or another, you'll definitely want to check out the new book coming out. And with that, I'll say thank you very much. Thanks, John. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, David.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.